Welcome to this explainer. Right now, across literally every sector, organizations are scrambling. They're trying to figure out how to deploy artificial intelligence responsibly. But look, there is a massive problem with how we're actually learning to do this. There's this idea floating around that generic AI governance is enough. Well, that is a dangerous illusion. As we're going to see today, deep domain specialization isn't just a nice to have, it is your absolutely essential tactical survival plan.
Okay, let's just dive right into this core ultimatum. Look at this quote from the July 2026 white paper by AICAREAGENTS247. The choice is not between breadth and depth. It is between relevance and obsolescence. That sets the stage perfectly, doesn't it? The clock is ticking here. You either adapt and go deep into specific industries or, frankly, you risk being completely automated out of existence.
So the massive, rapid explosion of AI has given a lot of really well-meaning professionals this false sense of comfort in broad universal frameworks. We're talking about heavy hitters like the NIST AI Risk Management Framework or ISO 42001. And hey, those are fantastic foundations. But if you're treating a hospital, a bank, and a legal aid society like they have the exact same risk profile just because they all use AI, that's a fatal error. The actual realities on the ground, things like HIPAA in healthcare or the Equal Credit Opportunity Act in finance, they demand entirely different structural approaches. It's not a one-size-fits-all game.
Which brings us to Section 1, Anatomy of a Disaster. We're going to break down exactly why the specific type of business you're in completely dictates your everyday governance reality.
You see, every single industry has these jagged, lethal regulatory tripwires. In healthcare, you're not just philosophizing about AI principles, you are actively navigating HIPAA and strict FDA software as a medical device regulations. Jump over to finance, and boom, you're dealing with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and fair credit laws. Legal aid? Now you're juggling attorney-client privilege and legal services corporation restrictions. And it's not just the laws, right? It's the stakeholders. A generic framework literally cannot encode the totally different needs of a hospital patient versus a bank customer or a legal defendant.
Because the actual risks you face, they depend entirely on where you're operating. If you rely on a generic template to measure risk, you are absolutely going to miss the critical hazards. Let's think about it. An AI error in a manufacturing plant could cause a predictive maintenance failure, leading to actual physical injury on the factory floor. Meanwhile, a financial AI error causes devastating economic ruin through lending discrimination. And in healthcare, an AI hallucination directly threatens patient safety. So a generic governance pro might just confidently check a box for risk, totally oblivious to the fact that an AI hallucination in an ICU is vastly different than a biased loan application.
So, what does this actually look like in practice? Let's see how this builds into a total disaster in the real world. What really happens when a generalist assesses, say, an AI clinical documentation tool? One designed to automatically generate medical chart notes from doctor-patient conversations. Notice the massive blind spot we've got right here. A generalist comes in, does their standard assessment, and points out basic data privacy concerns. And yeah, they're technically correct, but it's dangerously incomplete. A healthcare specialist, on the other hand, immediately spots a potentially lethal regulatory trap. The tool might trigger an FDA medical device classification. If you don't know that going in, their entire governance plan is fundamentally broken from day one. Or let's consider algorithmic bias. Your standard generalist might just verify if the AI was trained on diverse data. Cool. But they completely miss the terrifying reality specific to this domain. If the AI generates inaccurate billing documentation because of a bias in how it processes different voices or accents, that creates massive False Claims Act exposure for the hospital. We are talking about a multi-million-dollar mistake that a generalist wouldn't even know they should be looking for. And then there's the buzzword of the decade, transparency. A generalist casually demands that the AI's operations be transparent, which sure sounds great in a textbook, but they're completely unaware that altering clinical documentation patterns to meet some generic transparency goal can directly trigger severe Medicare coding and reimbursement impacts. You absolutely cannot just slap a broad principle onto a system without knowing how the financial and regulatory plumbing of that specific industry actually works. Honestly, even a simple word like accuracy totally changes meaning. In this highly regulated environment, accuracy isn't just some conceptual goal to strive for. No, it means navigating incredibly strict O&C, that's the Office of the National Coordinator, certification requirements just to integrate that AI into electronic health records. A generalist probably doesn't even know what that acronym stands for, let alone how to audit a complex system for it. And this brilliantly illustrates our final tripwire. The generalist framework strongly suggests implementing human oversight. Sounds responsible, right? Check the box. But the specialist knows they aren't just ticking an oversight box. They are preparing the organization for severe malpractice liability. If those AI-generated notes contain clinically significant errors that a rushed doctor happens to miss, human oversight isn't just a best practice anymore. It's the literal line between safe patient care and a devastating career-ending lawsuit.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the survival blueprint. Universal frameworks like NIST or ISO, they're just the skeleton. Specialization provides your tactical extraction plan to actually survive and implement governance that works. To pull this off, you absolutely have to master 3 pillars of domain depth. First up, the regulatory landscape. That means knowing every statute, agency guidance document, and enforcement action specific to your sector inside and out. Second, the industry standards. You have to understand the professional associations and accreditation bodies that actually hold the power in your field. And third, the operational realities. You have to understand how internal decisions are actually made, where the authority resides, and how risk is currently being managed in your specific type of business. Once you've laid that foundation, you've got to prove it by building a specialized portfolio of governance artifacts. You're going to create sector-specific risk assessment templates, write tailored policy drafts that cite the exact statutes, and build rigorous compliance audit checklists. By executing these steps, you literally transform yourself from a vulnerable generalist into an indispensable asset. You become the person who speaks the exact language of the decision-makers from minute one.
This brings us to Section 3, the ultimatum. It is a stark choice between relevance and obsolescence.
Look at how the trajectories diverge here. As tightening regulations like the EU AI Act or California's SB 1047 introduce strict, highly explicit sector-specific requirements, the economic reality is getting really harsh. Generalist knowledge, like the ability to just map out a basic AI framework, is rapidly becoming commoditized. Entry-level generalists are easily going to be replaced by automated software tools and AI platforms that can literally walk an organization through a NIST framework at a fraction of the cost. But specialists who truly understand the intersection of AI and their complex domains, they become incredibly rare, highly compensated, and fiercely protected by their organizations. Why? Because they possess a nuanced, deep combination of knowledge that software just cannot replicate.
The era of the automated generalist is rapidly approaching its end. Real organizations out there need governance that reflects their specific, high-stakes realities, not just academic theories. So I want to leave you with this final critical thought to ponder. When the clock runs out on general AI frameworks, which side of the table will you be on?